Well, people often think socialism is about a century old, but a best-selling author says it's part of a larger movement that goes back more than 2,000 years. John Waggy has more.
In his new book, Ameritopia, best-selling author Mark Levin goes back as far as Plato and Socrates to describe the clash between two worldviews. Those who want a utopian society run by elites where the individual serves the state, and those who say the state should have strict limits and first protect the individual's rights. Levin says the statists, whose philosophical ancestors include Plato and Karl Marx, have gained much ground in today's America, and that the nation's founding fathers warned about the threat of federal regulation in citizens' daily lives. Levin writes, America has become a society in which the people are wise enough to choose their own leaders, but too incompetent to choose the right light bulb.
Well, we have with us Mark Levin. He's written a book with an intriguing title, Ameritopia. Mark, it's good to have you with us. Thank you for being with us.
You know, Pat, it's a great honor. I'm a big fan. I love your program. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. You know, you emphasize very strongly the 10th Amendment. You said the left is ignoring that amendment. What do they want here in America?
What they want is a heavily centralized, concentrated government, which is what they have, which is exactly the opposite of what the framers talked about. And we talk about this superficially, so what I decided to do is go back and see where all this philosophy comes from that they rely on. And I just picked a few of the philosophers that seem to fit perfectly. You know, Plato in the Republic with his caste system and the philosopher kings, these masterminds. And we have Thomas More in Utopia, where the word comes from, with this radical egalitarianism, where everybody's equal and the government imposes its will to that end. And we have Thomas Hobbes with the Leviathan, this massive central government where we have a sovereign and we are the subjects. And, of course, Marx and Engels, where we have this phony two-class system, the landowners and the workers fighting with each other until somehow we have this paradise that develops. And that, to some extent, is what we see with the obsession, the endless obsession with government today, which is constantly involved in calibrating our lifestyles, and not for the good, but for the bad. And then, Pat, we have the other side, which is unalienable rights. These are God-given unalienable rights. It's right there in the Declaration. Where did that come from? It came from a number of people, including John Locke, who emphasized individual sovereignty. So what I try and explain in this book is there are really two major philosophical divides here. One is enlightened. You know, the funny thing about people of faith are attacked all the time for rejecting reason and knowledge and science. Excuse me. We accept all of those. And as Locke says, reason brings us to have faith and to believe in God. On the other hand, the other folks who claim to represent science and reason and all the rest completely ignore it.
Well, you mentioned, you know, one very popular author named Thomas Friedman, who writes for the New York Times, who pretty much wants to ignore the Constitution, override it. He thinks that the Constitution is a restriction on the utopians who want to make this a much better world, according to them.
Well, in that sense, he's right, because constitutionalism and utopianism can't live. What is this utopianism? Utopianism is a fantasy. It's a dogma. It's a false religion, in which some mastermind or a group of mastermind and their experts claim to have the power to reshape man, to change the nature of man, in essence, to build heaven on earth. And what they build, frankly, is hell on earth. They build these miserable societies throughout human history, and yet these masterminds, and we have them today, they think, oh, well, that was all bad. It wasn't done right. It was done piecemeal. We have the real plan, the real ideal society, as Plato would call it. The fact of the matter is that what they propose is impossible, it's impracticable, and what they do in order to get around that is they're always talking about big visions and ambitious government in the future, that we just haven't surrendered enough of our individual liberty and enough of our private property to make it work. And you can even hear them talk that way today.
What did you find out in your historical research about health care? They seem to focus in on that very much.
You know, that's a great question. We find that the issue of government run and government control of our health care goes as far back as Plato's Republic, probably before and throughout. And it's interesting that these top-down authoritarian, if not totalitarian regimes, or fictions even, They want to control health care because health care controls the people. It's not really about health care. It's about control, coercion, torment, and basically dispiriting the people and denuding them of their individual liberty.
How deeply is our current president and his advisors or his advisors into this philosophy? Do you think they are utopian without question?
I think they're utopian without question. Wittingly or unwittingly, they have an ideology, and they're not going to let facts and experience and their record get in the way. So they keep pushing it regardless. And, you know, I watched the State of the Union speech, and one of the things that troubles me enormously is when we have a president, any president, who stands up there and talks about good people who should be subsidized and embraced, bad people who should be attacked and viciously so, and good businesses that should be subsidized, bad businesses that should be punished. First of all, the president has no authority under our Constitution to fundamentally transform America or treat Americans that way. So that's number one. Number two, this mindset that one person, one mastermind, coming out of 310 million of us, you know, we the riffraff, can somehow figure out how to rearrange society, how to superimpose on top of this society some top-down, heaven on earth, is the most dangerous concept of them all. And yet, when you look at what's going on today in America, there's an obsession with this. More regulations, more government, and that's why I have a chapter in the book called the Post-Constitutional America. The Constitution is all but ignored today. We've got a massive federal judiciary that is involved in all kinds of activism. We have a massive fourth branch of government, an administrative state, spitting out over 80,000 pages of laws every day. This thing is completely out of control.
Well, it's interesting, Mark, that they put criminal sanctions on these laws. They don't just pass laws and say, wouldn't it be nice if? They say, if you disobey, we will put you in prison. So our prisons are choked with people who are being arrested for violating these laws.
That's right. And as a matter of fact, the Congressional Research Service was asked, how many of these federal regulations over the years have been passed have criminal penalties? And they said, we don't know. We know there's tens of thousands of them, but we don't know how many. Now, think about that. We have strict liability provisions in these regulations. They're being spit out by bureaus and agencies, so numerous, we can't even count them. We're all strictly liable for them. And it is an enormous array of laws covering. The real question isn't what is regulated today. The real question today is what isn't regulated today.
Thomas Donohue's head of the chamber said that they had done some research and found that in the pipeline there are twice as many regulations waiting to be put in effect than there are right now, which is just as shocking deprivation of our liberty.
You know, Alexis de Tocqueville talked about this in Democracy in America, which is actually 2 books, and he was not a contemporary of the framers. He was somewhat later, but he looked back and he said, you know, in America, I think these problems that democracies tend to have will be avoided because the Americans are a different people. They're individualistic. They have a different history than they have in Europe. They will resist this. They have all these local governments. They have these states that will resist it. Well, for 100 years, the left has done everything it can to destroy these barriers to tyranny. And so what we have now are just these endless regulations. And the way to really de Tocqueville thought to destroy a people and destroy their spirit is through the heavy weight of what he called administrative despotism. And I don't think there's any question we see this happening today.
Well, that's exactly right. Mark, thank you so much for being with us. Ladies and gentlemen, his book is called Ameritopia, #1 bestseller on the New York Times bestseller list, and it's been up there for a number of weeks. And it's an intriguing book based on constitutional and political theory that goes way back into the founding of this nation and beyond. It's very, very interesting. Mark, thanks again for being with us.
God bless you.
You too.